A land where there was no nation, no flag, no identity. There were only dense forests, swaying fields, and the arrogant rulers of a distant country who reigned over them. This is the story of the man who gave that land a name, America, and gave that name a sole freedom. The 22nd of February 1732. On the fertile soil of Virginia, a child was born into a simple family. He was named George Washington. His father was Augustine Washington, a small landowner. Life was plain, dreams were unknown. But destiny had already decided something else. When George was only 11 years old, his father passed away. The responsibilities of the household suddenly grew heavier. His schooling remained incomplete. But George did not give up. He picked up books himself, learned mathematics, read maps, and became a surveyor, one who measures land. This was that first step which connected him to the vast land of the country he would one day build. He was 20 years old when the Virginia militia entrusted him with the leadership of a small military unit. This was the era when Britain and France were both competing to stake their claim on American soil. Battles were being fought in the forests, blood was being shed, and in this very fire, the true character of George Washington was being forged. In 1754, the French and Indian War broke out. Washington fought his first major battle. In one encounter, he was nearly killed. Bullet holes were visible on his uniform, yet not a single scratch had touched his body. People said this man has been saved for some other purpose. After the fighting, Washington returned home. He married Martha Custis. He tended to his farm at Mount Vernon. Life was peaceful, but this peace did not last long. Britain's policies were breaking the boundaries of oppression day by day. Taxes were being imposed without representation. American merchants were being strangled. In Boston, chests of tea were thrown into the sea. This was the first spark of fury. And that spark slowly ignited all 13 colonies. The Continental Congress convened in Philadelphia. The leaders needed a commander who could transform this scattered people into an army. Every eye rested on one man, George Washington. Washington stood and said, "I am not worthy of this responsibility, but I will give my entire life to it." It was this very humility that made him great. Now began the most difficult chapter in history. Washington had a tired, hungry, broken army. Before him stood the most powerful military force in the world, the British Army. Defeat after defeat came. New York was lost. Soldiers were fleeing. Morale was shattering. But Washington did not break. That night of December 1776 freezing, dark, numbing to the bone, the Delaware River was covered in ice. Washington ferried his soldiers across that river silently in the darkness of the night, and by the time morning came, he launched a sudden attack on the British allied Hessian soldiers at Trenton. This victory was small, but it breathed life back into the soul of an entire revolution. The winter of Valley Forge history still shudders remembering it. In the brutal cold of 1777 to 78, Washington's army was walking through snow without shoes. No clothes, no food, no medicine. Thousands of soldiers died of illness. But Washington stayed in that same snow with his soldiers, not in a palace, but in a tent. A commander who goes hungry alongside his army, that is what a true leader is. And then came that golden day, 1781, the Battle of Yorktown. With France's help, Washington surrounded British General Cornwallis. There was no path to flee, no strength left to fight. Cornwallis surrendered, and on that day, America became free. The entire world was astonished. A small rebel army had brought the greatest imperial power in the world to its knees. But here came the turning point that sets George Washington apart from all other victors. After the victory, his own officers said to him, "Become the king. You have won this country. This country is yours." And Washington refused. He returned his sword to Congress and said, "I am a citizen. My work is done. This country now belongs to the people." The world was stunned. Very few people in history have been given power and then turned it away. In 1787, the process of drafting the Constitution began. Once again, Washington was called upon. And in 1789, unanimously, George Washington was elected the first president of America. This was the world's first democratic presidential election. He completed 2 terms, and when the demand arose for a 3rd term, he refused again. He said, "No single person is greater than this country. Not I, not anyone." This was the tradition that has continued in America to this very day. 1799, December 14. At Mount Vernon, in his own home, George Washington breathed his last. He was 67 years old. When the news of his death spread, the entire country wept. Even his enemies, Britain and France, lowered their flags in his honor. Napoleon Bonaparte said, "He was a man who can only be compared to the greatest people in history." George Washington built no palace, wore no crown, founded no dynasty. He did only one thing: laid the foundation of a country where every person would be equal, where power would not rest in any one person's hands, where the people themselves would be the true rulers. And that is why history has remembered him by only one name: Father of the Nation. Father of the Nation, George Washington.
Every legend has a story, and we bring those stories to life. Like, subscribe, and join Biography by TK.